I had no idea the reconciliation dinner my husband planned at that upscale American restaurant would include an uninvited guest, his 24-year-old mistress. I also didn't know his mother had a lawyer's envelope ready to free him from our 7-year marriage. But they didn't know I'd already signed my new contract, moved my money, and told the waiter, "When it's time to pay, deliver the bill directly to the young woman in the cream dress." My name is Holly Bishop. I am 33 years old, and for 7 of those years, I have lived in Ravendale, Ohio. Ravendale is a town built on the quiet hum of old money and the polished expectations that come with it. I have neither. My identity, for the longest time, was forged in the heat and noise of the Brixton House bar and kitchen. I didn't just work there, I ran the floor. As shift manager, I handled the inventory, charmed the regulars, calmed the stressed chefs, and navigated the Saturday night rush when 3 servers called out with the same mysterious flu. I was competent. I was respected. I loved the controlled chaos of it. But competence in the service industry was not ambition in the Bishop family lexicon. My husband, Dylan, and his mother, Veronica, viewed my job as a temporary diversion, something a person did before getting a real career. So, for the past year, I've been an administrative coordinator at the Dre Vellon Group. It's a mid-level logistics company with gray carpets and fluorescent lighting. The work is fine. I coordinate schedules and manage procurement databases, but to hear Veronica describe it at family dinners was an exercise in polite humiliation. "Holly is still adjusting at Dre Vellon," she'd say, as if I were a rescue animal. It's not a true corporation, of course, but it's a good starting point for her. A starting point. At 33, this past Friday, the migraine started its drill. Around 2 in the afternoon, a sharp, pulsing pain began behind my right eye. Staring at the flickering spreadsheet of shipping manifests became impossible. I apologized to my manager, clocked out 3 hours early, and drove home through the quiet Ravendale streets. The house was still. Dylan's sleek sedan was already in the driveway, which was unusual. I figured he was on a conference call, taking it from the home office. I slipped my key into the side door, entering the mudroom that served as a buffer between the house and the garage. I stopped, my hand on the polished nickel knob to the kitchen. I heard his voice. Dylan. He was in the garage. He always paced in the garage when he was agitated, walking circles around his car. His voice was low, but it carried that specific, impatient tone he reserved for his mother. "Mom, I told you. Lacey's younger. That's all." I went absolutely still. My keys, clutched in my fist, dug sharp metal teeth into my palm. The throb of the migraine vanished, sucked away by a sudden, icy void in my chest. "I can't just stay with someone who doesn't elevate me," he went on. The complaint sounded rehearsed. Elevate, that was their word. Veronica's favorite verb. A word she used to describe Dylan's promotion, the private school she wanted for hypothetical grandchildren, the new blend of coffee she'd bought. It was a word that always made me feel heavy, like I was the anchor holding him down. I pressed my ear against the cool, painted wood of the door. I held my breath. Lacey. The name didn't just land, it detonated. Lacey Rowe. I'd heard the name maybe twice. An intern, he'd said, at a client's firm. Young, eager. He'd laughed about her enthusiasm. 24. He'd definitely mentioned she was 24. I couldn't hear his mother's response, just the thin, reedy murmur of her voice through the phone's speaker. But then Dylan replied to whatever she'd proposed. "No, she hasn't suspected a thing." A beat of silence. "You really think, at the birthday dinner—" My stomach clenched. My birthday? Next Thursday? The dinner he had presented as a grand gesture. "Just us," he'd said. "A reconciliation dinner, to get us back on track." I leaned in, desperate now, straining to hear. Veronica's voice came through clearer this time, sharp and decisive, the speakerphone volume turned up. "Then do it cleanly at her birthday dinner," Veronica commanded. The lack of any moral objection, any hesitation, was staggering. "At that restaurant she worked at is even better. So everyone sees she doesn't belong. That restaurant, the Brixton House, my home turf, the place I had helped build, where Gus, the owner, still sent me Christmas cards, where the waitstaff were my friends. They wanted to do it there, a public execution. They wanted me to be humiliated by my own people. Dylan must have made a sound of doubt, because his mother's voice cut in again, impatient. She won't make a scene where people know her. She'll be too embarrassed. It's perfect. I heard Dylan let out a long sigh. It wasn't the sound of a man in turmoil. It was the sound of a man accepting a convenient solution. Okay, Mom, I'll book it. His voice shifted then, hardening, finding that core of bishop arrogance I had mistaken for confidence. And I'll tell her straight if she makes a scene. She's younger, that's all. I don't see the problem. I backed away from the door. I did it slowly, placing one foot behind the other, as if I were retreating from a wild animal. My hands were perfectly steady. My vision was sharp. The shock was so total, so profound. It had burned away all the fog of my confusion. This was not just an affair. This was not just a failing marriage. This was a setup, a meticulously planned ambush. They weren't just divorcing me. They were orchestrating my public demise. They wanted to strip me of my dignity in the one place I had ever truly earned it, to reinforce their narrative that I was beneath them, that I never belonged. I did not go to the bedroom to cry. I did not throw anything. I walked silently, past the beige living room, past the oversized floral arrangement Veronica had insisted on, and into the small home office. I sat at the desk, the chair gliding silently on the hardwood floor. I woke the laptop. I opened the browser. I logged into our joint checking account. I took screenshots of the monthly expense log, the mortgage payments, the auto loan withdrawals, my bonus from Dravalon, deposited 2 months prior. The bonus I had earned, the money I'd told Dylan we should use for the new roof. I opened a new browser tab. I typed in the web address for a different bank, a smaller, local credit union. I logged into my new savings account. Account number ending in 4012. I had opened it last week. I hadn't opened it because I knew. I'd opened it because I had been feeling the chill for a long time. The way Veronica's eyes would scan my outfits, the way Dylan had stopped asking about my day, and instead started offering suggestions for my career. The constant, subtle pressure to elevate. I had felt the ground shifting beneath me, and I had opened the account as a precaution, a small lifeboat, just in case. I clicked transfer funds. I typed in the amount, my bonus, my half of the savings, every dollar I could trace back to my own paycheck. The screen confirmed the transfer would take 24 business hours to clear. It would be gone by Monday morning. I closed the laptop. The house was silent again, until the mechanical rumble of the garage door opening vibrated through the floor. He was leaving, going to see her, no doubt, going to elevate himself. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. My throat was dry. I took a glass from the cabinet and filled it with cold water from the tap. I drank it down in 3 long swallows. I leaned against the cool granite counter and caught my reflection in the dark, reflective glass of the microwave door. My face was pale, but my eyes were focused. 33. My skin was clear. My jawline was strong. I was fit. I wasn't worn out. I wasn't the frumpy, discarded wife they were painting me as. I was just not 24. A small, bitter smile touched my lips. I thought of Lacey Rowe, this 24-year-old intern, about to be seated at the center of my execution. Younger, I whispered to my reflection. Can she pay the bill? That garage door sliding shut was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. I stood in the kitchen, the glass of water empty in my hand, and let the timeline of my marriage unspool. The contempt I heard in Dylan's voice today wasn't new. It was just the first time it had been spoken aloud when I was supposed to be in the room. It had been there for 7 years. A quiet, acidic drip. It was there at our first Thanksgiving as a married couple. I remember Veronica circulating through her beige and cream living room, holding a tray of bacon-wrapped figs. She stopped at her husband's brother, Uncle Frank, and placed a manicured hand on my shoulder. "Frank, you've met Holly, Dylan's wife," she said, her smile tight. "She used to work in a restaurant." She paused, just long enough for the "used to" sink in, to frame it as a colorful, slightly dirty past. "But she is trying to find a more serious career now. Trying. As if I were a remedial student struggling with basic math. I had been a manager, responsible for $40,000 in nightly revenue and a staff of 30. But in her world, it was just working in a restaurant. Then there was Dylan's sister, Brooke. 29 years old, living in a subsidized apartment downtown, and working in marketing at some ridiculously named creative agency, the Vapor Group, or the Idea Sphere, something that sounded like it sold artisanal air. Brooke never looked at me. She looked through me. She had mastered the art of treating me like hired help in her own mother's home. "Could I get a glass of water?" she'd ask, without looking up from her phone. Even if we were the only two people on the sofa, I'd fetch it, because it was easier than the passive-aggressive sigh she'd unleash if I said, "The kitchen is right there, Brooke." Holidays became a ritual of subtle humiliation. After dinner, Veronica would hold court, listing the year's accomplishments. Her voice would swell with pride. "Dylan, of course, closed the big Westerly account. A huge win. And Brooke's latest campaign got over 600,000 impressions online." Then, the inevitable pivot. Her eyes would scan the room until they landed on me. The wattage of her smile would dim by half. "And Holly," she would say, tapping a painted fingernail on her wine glass. "Well, Holly is still managing." Managing was her word for existing. It was a verbal pat on the head, a signal to the rest of the family that my contribution was, as always, negligible. In the first year, maybe 2. Dylan would push back. "Mom, Holly runs the busiest shift at the Brixton. She's not just managing, she's a boss," he'd say, finding my hand under the table. I adored him for it. I thought his loyalty was bulletproof, but the pressure in Ravendell is a slow, steady erosion. The Bishop family's primary anxiety is optics, how things look, and marrying up is the central religion. By year 3, Dylan stopped defending me. By year 5, he started editing me. "Holly, do you really think that dress is appropriate for the club dinner?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed in that way he'd learned from his mother. "What's wrong with it?" It looks a bit like something you'd wear to work, at the restaurant." He wanted the Bishop standard, polished, quiet, cashmere, invisible. My vibrant, competent personality was becoming a liability. My old job was their favorite punching bag. They despised the Brixton house. "It's standing work." "Holly," Veronica would sniff, as if I'd been toiling in a coal mine. "It's just not elegant. The hours are so blue-collar," Brooke chimed in once, scrolling through photos of an influencer in Dubai. They conveniently, actively, forgot that my blue-collar salary, combined with Dylan's starter wage at the investment firm, was what had secured the 10% down payment on our house. My standing work paid for the very hardwood floors Veronica now stood on while insulting me. My tips had paid for Dylan's first truly expensive suit, the one he wore to get the promotion that, in his mind, finally elevated him above me. The mask didn't just slip. Veronica tore it off herself about 8 months ago. Dylan had just received that promotion. We were at Veronica's, a mandatory Sunday dinner to celebrate. I was quiet, nursing a glass of Cabernet. I was feeling low. Having just been rejected for an office manager position at a local law firm, Veronica cornered me by the fireplace, away from the men. She put her hand on my forearm, and I flinched at how cold her rings felt against my skin. "Holly," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential, venomous whisper, "my sun is rising. You must rise too." She smiled, but her eyes were like chipped ice. A woman over 30, especially one still lurching around low-level office jobs, well, she will find it very hard to keep a husband. It wasn't advice. It was a threat. That line became my ghost. Hard to keep a husband. It was the moment I realized this wasn't a partnership. It was a performance review, and I was failing. It wasn't for lack of trying. I hated my job at Dravelon, but I stayed. I polished my resume until it gleamed. I applied for every serious career I could find: executive assistant, operations coordinator, client relations manager. The rejection emails piled up, all with the same polite, coded language. Thank you for your interest, but we have decided to pursue other candidates whose educational background more closely matches our needs. It was a gentle way of saying, you don't have the degree. I had 7 years of high-pressure management experience. I had grit. I had common sense. I could de-escalate a crisis and balance a budget in my head. But I didn't have the framed piece of paper from a private university that would make me Bishop Standard. So, standing there in my silent kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, I finally understood. Dylan's words from the garage replayed. She's younger, that's all. That wasn't an excuse for infidelity. That was the summary of a 7-year-long family campaign. I wasn't elevating him. I wasn't rising. I was 33, stuck at the Dravelin group, and lacking the right pedigree. In their eyes, I was expired. Younger was just the convenient, socially acceptable replacement for better. It wasn't Dylan's original thought. It was Veronica's script, finalized and approved. And next Thursday, at my birthday dinner, they were finally ready to hand it to me. I didn't cry, the tears I expected, the hot, stinging flood of betrayal never arrived. The shock had frozen them. The rage was too cold, too clear. There was no time for a breakdown. A breakdown was what they were expecting at the restaurant. A breakdown was a luxury I couldn't afford. My pain was still there, a dull, heavy stone in my gut. But it wasn't paralyzing me. It was focusing me. It was turning into fuel. I left the kitchen, the empty glass on the counter, and went back to the office. I sat in the same chair where I'd transferred my money. My hands moved with robotic precision. I woke the laptop. I ignored the joint banking tab. I logged into my work email. The Dravelon group. The not a real corporation job. My inbox was full of the usual mundane fires, shipping delays, vendor invoices, but one email sat at the top, flagged from yesterday afternoon. Subject follow-up coordinator role, Aurora Vista Hospitality. I had sent out a flurry of applications 3 weeks ago. During a particularly suffocating Sunday dinner at Veronica's, I'd done it out of pure, quiet desperation. Aurora Vista Hospitality, a luxury hotel chain. I clicked it open. Dear Ms. Bishop, we were very impressed with your resume, particularly your extensive background in high-volume FB management. We would like to schedule a virtual interview at your earliest convenience. I read the name of the hiring manager. I read the proposed time. Wednesday, the day before my birthday, the day before the ambush. A sudden, sharp jolt of adrenaline hit me, stronger than caffeine. This was it. This wasn't just another rejection. This was a door. This was the escape hatch. I heard Veronica's voice, that smug, pitying tone she used. Holly just wouldn't know how to survive without Dylan. She's not built for the real world. They truly believed it. They thought I was a parasite, a decorative, slightly disappointing attachment. The thought that I could just leave, that I could pack a bag and have a better salary waiting for me, was a scenario that had never even crossed their minds. And the irony, Aurora Vista Hospitality. They wanted me because of my background. The email said, "Your experience in high-volume restaurant management is exactly what we look for." The very job Veronica had shamed me out of. Serving people all day. Holly, she had said to me once, her nose wrinkled in distaste. Then you come home and serve your husband. It's the life of an elevated servant. The jab had worked. I'd left the Brixton house within 6 months, trading the dynamic, challenging environment I loved for the sterile gray cubicle at Dravelin, all to appease them, all to be Bishop Standard. And now, they were choosing the Brixton house as my stage, my old home. They thought they were cornering me in a place of humiliation. They had no idea they were handing me home field advantage. My hand went to my cell phone. I needed one voice that wasn't in my head. One person who was purely on my side. I scrolled to M, and pressed call. Maya Ortiz. My best friend since high school. Now a firecracker of a lawyer up in Cleveland. She picked up on the second ring, as she always does. Hey girl, what's up? You sound weird. I kept it brief. No tears, just facts. Dylan's cheating with a 24-year-old intern. He and Veronica are planning to serve me divorce papers at my birthday dinner at the Brixton House. They're staging a public humiliation. Silence on the line. But not for long. Maya doesn't do pity. She does strategy. At the Brixton. Are they insane? That's your house. They think it'll make me too embarrassed to fight back. I heard her take a sharp breath. Then her voice. Pure American steel. Okay, first, you're a badass. Second, you're not embarrassed. They are. Third, she paused. Girl, make it expensive. I'm already working on it, I said. We hung up. That was all I needed. Permission to fight. I turned back to the laptop. Make it expensive. I logged back into the joint checking account. The transfer was still pending. A satisfying line item in bright orange. Pending transfer to Ravendale Credit Union. Good. Now, for the rest. I clicked on the Documents tab. Then, Account Statements. I went back, month by month, for the last 3 years. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I hit print, the printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out page after page. Page 1, the $5,000 wire transfer to the roofing company last spring. That was my bonus from the previous year. Page 2, the monthly auto loan payment for Dylan's sedan, the one he was probably driving to Lacey's apartment right now, paid from the joint account. But my paycheck was the one that always covered it. Page 3, the quarterly insurance premiums for the house and both cars. Veronica had once told her friends. Of course, we Bishops cover all the major expenses. A blatant, casual lie. I printed the transaction history. Page 4, the credit card statement, a supplementary card in Dylan's name, linked to my primary account. I scanned the charges. A $1,000 charge at a jeweler 2 weeks ago. A.H. Jewelers. I hadn't received any jewelry. A chill ran down my spine. A gift for Lacey. Paid for with my credit. I kept printing. I printed every utility bill, every grocery receipt, every major contribution I had made. The stack of paper grew thick. This wasn't just money. This was my labor, my contribution, my proof that I wasn't the freeloader they'd decided I was. This was my defense against the she lived off him story they were already rehearsing. I took the stack of papers and filed them neatly into a fresh manila folder. I would not be bringing this to the office. I'd take it to my car later. For the rest of the weekend, I would be the perfect, normal Holly. I would go to Drevellen Group on Monday and Tuesday, sit in my gray cubicle, and coordinate shipping. I would smile at Dylan when he came home tonight, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. I would not give them any reason to suspect the script had been leaked. They were planning an ambush, but they were the ones walking into the trap. I looked at the calendar on my desk. The white squares stared back at me. A map of my next week. Wednesday, 10:30 a.m., virtual interview. Aurora Vista Hospitality, Thursday, 7 p.m. Birthday dinner, the Brixton House Bar and Kitchen. I closed my eyes. If I got that job, if I could walk into that dinner not as Holly Bishop, the failed wife, but as Holly Bishop, the new hospitality coordinator for Aurora Vista, holding a contingent offer letter. I opened my eyes. The hurt was still there, but the calculation was stronger. The plan was forming. They had given me 6 days to prepare for their war. I was going to use every single second. I had survived the weekend. It was the longest performance of my life. I feigned a receding migraine. I smiled. I asked Dylan about his meetings. He was solicitous, overly kind, the way a butcher sharpens a knife while admiring the lamb. He was so transparent in his relief, so convinced I suspected nothing, that it was almost insulting. On Tuesday morning, the air had a sharp, wet bite that promised a cold rain. I got halfway to the gray fortress of the Drevellen Group, driving on autopilot. When I realized I'd left my good navy blazer on the back of the dining room chair, the thin cardigan I was wearing was useless against the office air conditioning. I cursed, checked the time, 8:45, and turned the car around. I had time. I pulled into our driveway. Veronica's white Lexus was parked blocking the garage. My heart didn't just sink. It seized. An unscheduled visit on a Tuesday morning, she never came over unless it was planned, or unless she was dropping off something she deemed essential, that was really just a critique of my housekeeping. I let myself in through the front door, slipping my key into the lock as quietly as possible. The click was muffled by the sound of her voice, low and professional, coming from the dining room, and there she was, Veronica Bishop, seated at the head of my dining table as if it were her boardroom. She wasn't drinking coffee. She was working. Fanned out on the polished dark wood were several thick, stapled documents, legal-sized paper, and next to them, gleaming under the chandelier I'd picked out and she'd hated, was a single, elegant, champagne-colored envelope. It looked like a wedding invitation. She looked up, startled, as my key fob dropped into the ceramic bowl by the door. A flicker of pure panic flashed across her face, so fast I would have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. She instinctively moved her hands, stacking the papers into a messy pile, covering the top pages. "Holly," she said, her voice a full octave higher than usual. "I didn't expect you home. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I said. I forced my pace to be casual, unhurried. I walked past the table toward the chair where my blazer hung. "I just forgot this. What's all this? You're refinancing the house." Veronica let out a short, dry laugh. It sounded like scraping stones. "Oh, heavens no. Nothing so dramatic. Just some financial papers, getting things in order for Dylan, end-of-year tax planning. You know how disorganized he can be." She was lying. She was a terrible liar. Her smile was stretched so thin it looked painful. I nodded, not looking at her, but at the table. I looped the blazer over my arm. My eyes scanned the stack. She was fast, but not fast enough. My gaze locked onto the top page of the document she'd just tried to cover. It was heavy, cream-colored bond, legal letterhead, and I could read the header, clear as day, just below the attorney's embossed name. Petition to dissolve marriage. Case number pending. I didn't blink. I didn't stop moving. I turned, the blazer heavy on my arm. My blood felt like slush, but my face was neutral. So, that was the champagne-colored envelope, my execution warrant. It all clicked into place. The horrible, brilliant cruelty of it. They weren't just going to tell me at the restaurant. They were going to serve me. They were going to slide that elegant envelope across the table, right next to the birthday cake. They were going to hand me a pen, break me down, and make me sign away my marriage while I was sobbing, surrounded by the clatter of plates and the laughter of other diners, in front of the servers who used to be my team, in front of Gus. To make her remember, Veronica had said. They wanted witnesses. They wanted a story to tell. The story of how Holly, the emotional, unstable restaurant girl, finally cracked under pressure and had to be managed. As I turned to leave, a final perfect piece of evidence presented itself. Veronica's phone, sitting face up on the table next to the envelope, lit up. A text notification flashed across the lock screen. It was from Brooke. The preview was all I needed to see. "Don't forget to bring the asset agreement too. Make sure it's the one that stops her from demanding anything." I looked from the phone screen, with its damning little message, back to Veronica's face. Her smile was frozen, a mask of strained, wealthy politeness. The confirmation was absolute. It wasn't just Dylan and his mother, it was the whole Bishop clan. Brooke was the logistics coordinator, the document runner. They had all divided the labor of my destruction. I gave her my best Dravalon group administrative smile, vapid, pleasant, and utterly empty. "Tax planning sounds awful," I said, adjusting the blazer on my arm. "I'm just going to grab a coffee from the kitchen before I head back. Do you want one?" Oh, she was visibly thrown. She had expected something. Tears. An accusation. My bland, cooperative nature was the one thing she'd never prepared for. No, no, thank you, dear. I'm perfectly fine. Suit yourself, I said. I walked into the kitchen. I didn't make coffee. I didn't even touch the pot. I just ran the tap for 30 seconds, letting the sound of the water fill the silence. I leaned against the counter, breathing, in, out. I looked at my reflection in the dark microwave. My eyes were arctic. I walked back out, swinging my car keys. Have a good day, Veronica. See you Thursday, I guess. Yes, dear, she said, her hands already protectively sliding the petition into the champagne envelope. Thursday, it will be lovely. I closed the front door behind me. I walked calmly to my car. I got in. I locked the doors. And only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. It came out as a soundless, shaking gasp that racked my whole body for a single second. I didn't start the engine. Not yet. I pulled my phone from my purse. My hands were shaking. But it wasn't with fear. It was with adrenaline. Pure, high-octane rage. I scrolled to Gus Lambert. Gus had been the owner and general manager of the Brixton House for 30 years. He'd promoted me from server to shift lead, then to manager. He was tough, fair, and he missed nothing. He'd mostly retired from the floor, but he still ran the books and took the important calls. He answered in his usual gruff bark. Lambert. Gus, it's Holly. Holly Bishop. His voice warmed instantly, the gruffness cracking. Holly, how the hell are you? Haven't seen you in ages. Don't tell me you miss the Saturday brunch rush. I miss it every single day. Gus, I said, my voice tight. Listen, I need a favor. A big one. And it's a strange one. I'm listening. My husband booked a table for this Thursday, 7 p.m., for my birthday. It's under Bishop. It's going to be for 4 people. I see it on the screen right now, Gus said. Table 12, the good corner booth. He requested it special. Of course he did, I muttered. Gus, that dinner is a trap. It's not a birthday dinner. It's an ambush. My husband is bringing his mistress. His mother and his sister will also be there, and they are planning to publicly humiliate me. The line was dead silent. Gus was old school. He hated family drama in his restaurant, but he hated bullies more. He'd always had a quiet, simmering dislike for Veronica, ever since she'd tried to send back a perfectly cooked steak twice just to prove she could. What kind of humiliation? Holly? He asked, his voice flat. The legal kind. They're bringing divorce papers. They are going to serve me at the table. They chose your restaurant, Gus. They chose it because I used to work there. They want me to break down in front of the staff. Jesus Christ, Gus said. The disgust in his voice was raw. That family. I always knew they were theatrical, but this is a new low. I need your help to flip the script, I said. The party will be me, Dylan, his mother Veronica, his sister Brooke, and a 4th woman, a young girl, early 20s. Her name is Lacey Rowe. She'll probably be wearing a cream-colored dress, trying to look expensive. Okay, Lacey Rowe. Got it. What do you need? I need you to treat the dinner completely normally. Flawless service. The best you have. No winks, no hints, no welcome back. Holly. Just professional. Let them play their whole scene. Let them bring out their envelope. Let them do whatever it is they're planning to do. And when it's over, when the plates are cleared, when it's time for the check, I took a deep breath. I want you to instruct your server to deliver the bill, directly, to Lacey Rowe. Another long pause. Then, a low chuckle rumbled through the phone. Just hand the chit to the girlfriend. Hand her the bill, in the black folder. And just say, "You're handling this tonight, correct, Ms. Rowe?" Or, "The bill is under your name." Whatever sounds most professional, just make it absolutely clear that it's her responsibility. And what if she refuses? What if the husband steps in? Oh, he will, I said. But I just need that one moment. Gus, that one moment where the spotlight they built for me turns on them. I'll handle the rest. And I will tip your server, separately, $300, in cash, for the performance. Sold, Gus said immediately. And don't worry about the cash. This one's on the house. I'm putting Trent on it. My heart leaped. Trent. He was perfect. Trent was 23, sharp as a tack, utterly unfazable, and a brilliant, subtle actor. He'd been my protege before I left. He respected me. But more importantly, he loved theater. Trent is perfect, I said, a real smile touching my lips for the first time since Friday. He'll love it, Gus confirmed. He's been bored. Holly, I'm sorry they're doing this to you, but I'll be watching from the bar. Give 'em hell. That's the plan. Gus, thank you. I hung up the phone. I looked at the house, my house, where Veronica was still sitting at my table, polishing her champagne-colored weapon. She wanted to make me remember. I put the car in reverse, my hands steady on the wheel. Oh, I'll remember, I thought, and I'll make damn sure that they never, ever forget. At 10:25 a.m. on Wednesday, I sat at the small desk in our spare bedroom. The door was closed. Dylan was at the office, believing I was still working from home, nursing the last dregs of my migraine. The house was silent. The laptop chimed, and the video call window opened. Sarah Jenkins, Director of HR, Aurora Vista Hospitality, a woman in her late 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense haircut, smiled at me from her own screen. Holly, thank you for making the time, she said. Her voice was warm, professional. I have to tell you, your resume is a breath of fresh air for us. I must have looked confused. My resume, the one that had been rejected by accounting firms and law offices and serious corporations all over Ravendell. It is, absolutely, Sarah said, tapping a pen against her notebook. We see hundreds, and I mean hundreds of business degrees every week. We rarely see 7 years of intensive frontline management in a high-volume restaurant. You can't teach that. I'm looking at your responsibilities from the Brixton House inventory, payroll for a staff of 30, nightly revenue reconciliation, and high-end customer de-escalation. A jolt of my old confidence returned, a muscle I hadn't flexed in years. I was shift manager, I said, my voice clear and steady. The Brixton is a 200-seat establishment. On a Saturday night, we'd average 350 covers. My job was to make sure it ran perfectly, from the moment the doors opened until the last check was paid. That's exactly it, she said, leaning in. We aren't hiring a coordinator to just file spreadsheets. Holly, we're launching 3 new boutique hotels in the next 18 months. We need someone who understands the engine of hospitality. We need people who know what to do when the kitchen runs out of salmon at 8 p.m. on a Friday, not just people who know how to use Excel. I thought of Veronica's voice. Serving people all day, the life of an elevated servant. All the shame the bishops had so carefully layered on me, the embarrassment they'd cultivated around my past. It just evaporated. The very experience they deemed blue-collar and not elegant was what this high-end corporation valued most. My standing work was my golden ticket. The rest of the interview wasn't an interview at all. It was a conversation. We talked about logistics. We talked about vendor management. We talked about how to motivate a demoralized staff. After 30 minutes, she closed her notebook. Holly, I'll be blunt, Sarah said. You're exactly what we're looking for. The role is yours if you want it. I need to run the standard background check, which I'm sure will be clear, but I am authorized to extend you a contingent offer of employment. My heart hammered against my ribs. Contingent. It just means it's pending the background check. It's a formality. I will have the official offer letter, with the full salary and benefits package, in your inbox within 24 hours. We'd be looking at a start date in 2 weeks, if you can swing it. 24 hours. It would arrive today, the day before the dinner. 2 weeks, I said, my voice betraying nothing. That sounds perfect. Sarah, thank you. I look forward to seeing the letter. We disconnected. I sat in the silent room. It wasn't relief I felt. It was ignition. The email landed in my inbox at 4:15 p.m. Subject contingent, offer of employment. Aurora Vista Hospitality. I clicked the attachment. I read the PDF. The salary was 30% higher than what I made at Drevellen, and there, at the bottom of the first page, was a line item that made my breath catch: relocation bonus $5,000. Relocation. The word was a promise, a way out. Not just of this house, but of Ravendell. I hit print, the printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out the single, beautiful page, my future. Then, I went to the filing cabinet. I pulled out the manila folder I had stuffed with the printouts from last Friday. I went back to the desk. I found a new folder. It was a bright, glossy, impossible to miss red. The color of a stop sign, the color of an alarm. I slid the single-page offer letter from Aurora Vista on top. Then, I put all the other papers in behind it, the proof of the $5,000 roof payment, the auto loan statements for Dylan's car, the insurance bills Veronica had lied about, and my personal favorite, the credit card statement showing the $1,000 charge at A.H. Jewelers. Veronica had her elegant, champagne-colored envelope. I had my blood-red file. I closed the folder and put it in my leather work tote. Next, I went to my closet, my armor. My eyes scanned the dresses. I saw the soft, floral one Dylan had always liked. I saw the green silk one I'd worn for our last anniversary. I pushed them aside with a scrape of hangers. I wasn't dressing to please Dylan. I wasn't dressing to be pretty, and I sure as hell was not dressing to compete with a 24-year-old. I was dressing for a severance. I pulled out my best, most severe black pencil skirt, high-waisted, impeccably tailored. I found the crisp white blazer with the structured shoulders. I'd wear them with a simple black silk shell. This wasn't a birthday outfit. This wasn't a wife's outfit. This was the uniform of a woman who was walking into a negotiation, not a breakdown. I laid them out on the spare bed. Then, I went back into the closet and pulled down my dark blue overnight duffel bag. I packed efficiently, clean underwear, 2 more professional outfits, my running shoes and gear, my toiletries, my laptop. From the desk, I grabbed my passport and my birth certificate. I carried the bag downstairs and out to my car in the garage. I popped the trunk and stashed the bag in the compartment next to the spare tire. It was invisible. If this night went the way I planned, I was not coming back to this house. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of watching me pack. I was not going to endure the get your things and go scene. I was just going to be gone. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, the engine off. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Maya. Okay, code word for tomorrow night. If I send you the single word done, it means I've left him. It means the plan worked and I'm out. Her reply came back in less than 10 seconds. Done. Got it. When I get it, I'm just replying, proud of you, and I'll have the champagne ready in Cleveland. I smiled, a real thin smile. Proud of you. That was all I'd need. That night was the strangest of my life. The calm was absolute. The decision was made. The plan was locked. Dylan came home late, around 8. He claimed he'd been stuck in a meeting. He brought me flowers, a sad-looking bunch of roses from the grocery store. For your birthday tomorrow, he said, kissing my cheek. His lips were dry. The kiss felt like paper. I'm looking forward to our dinner, just us. And Mom and Brooke, of course, to celebrate. Of course, I said. I'm looking forward to it, too. Later. I lay in bed, the lights off, my breathing even, feigning sleep. The house was dark. He was in the master bathroom. The door was cracked open just enough to spill a long, thin rectangle of light onto the bedroom floor. I heard the hiss of the shower, and then, through the sound of the water, I heard it, the faint, unmistakable tap. Tap, tap, tap of a phone screen. He was texting, in the bathroom. While the shower ran, I watched the sliver of light on the floor. His shadow moved, blocking it partially. He was leaning against the door frame. Phone in hand. The tapping stopped. A faint, blue-white glow appeared on the ceiling above his head, the reflection of his screen as he held it, I could just make out his reflection in the large dresser mirror across the room, and I could see the name at the top of the message thread, Lacey. He was coordinating with her, making sure she was ready, giving her last-minute instructions for my execution. I closed my eyes. I didn't move a muscle. I didn't cry. The man I had loved, the man I had built a home with, was 10 feet away, conspiring with his mistress on the eve of my birthday to publicly destroy me. And I felt nothing. No rage, no jealousy, just a vast, cold, empty finality. He finished, turned off the shower, and came to bed, the scent of soap and his cologne filling the air. He thought I was asleep. He was snoring in minutes. I lay there in the dark, my back to him, my eyes wide open, thinking about the bill at the Brixton house. Tomorrow. Lacey. I thought, you pay for his dinner. The Thursday evening air was cold and damp, clinging to the windows of Dylan's sedan. I sat in the passenger seat, spine straight, my hands clasped loosely in my lap. The white blazer felt like armor. He reached over and placed a warm, proprietary hand on my knee. I resisted the violent urge to flinch, to recoil from his touch. I'm really glad we're doing this, Holly, he said. His voice was saturated with a false, practiced sincerity. It was his managing a client voice. I know things have been tense. I just want us to talk. You know, honestly, Mom's coming, and Brooke, I want everyone to be civilized. Civilized, the word a man uses right before he behaves like a barbarian. I turned and gave him a small, empty smile. I'm sure it will be fine, Dylan. My gaze drifted to the back seat. Tucked behind his headrest was a small, powder blue gift bag. It looked like it was from Tiffany's. It was tiny, a birthday gift, the pathetic little olive branch he would offer before bringing down the axe. It was the camouflage for the champagne-colored envelope. I wondered if he'd used my credit card for that, too. We pulled into the valet lane at the Brixton house. The familiar warm glow of the lights spilled out onto the wet pavement. This place had been my stage, my sanctuary, my battleground for 5 years. I knew every scuff on the floorboards, every trick of the lighting. Dylan thought he was bringing me here to weaken me. He had no idea he was bringing me home. Bishop party, the young hostess asked, her smile bright. She was new. She didn't know me. Yes, for 4, under Bishop, Dylan said, placing a hand on the small of my back, guiding me forward. Right this way. Your party is already seated. She led us past the humming bar. I caught Gus's eye for a fraction of a second. He was polishing a highball glass, watching, and toward the back. Table 12, the best in the house, the deep, U-shaped corner booth, private and dramatic, and there they were. Veronica and Brooke were seated on the left side, drinks already in hand. They looked like they were attending a high-end weekend brunch in Ravendell, not a family birthday dinner. Veronica wore an expensive-looking cream linen blazer. Brooke was in a silk blouse that probably cost $800. They were a portrait of relaxed, entitled wealth, and their phones were on the table. Both of them, not in their purses, but on the white tablecloth, propped up strategically. Brooke's was angled perfectly toward the empty seat that was clearly meant for me. Then I saw the fourth person, tucked into the booth next to Veronica, making herself small, was the girl, Lacey Rowe. She was exactly as I'd imagined, but more polished. Her blonde hair was a masterpiece of professional blow-drying, full of volume and shine. She wore a sleeveless dress, the color of pale cream, just as I'd told Gus. She looked up at us, her blue eyes wide, a nervous, excited tremor in her smile. Holly, Dylan said, his hand still on my back, a little too firm. I believe you've met Lacey Rowe from the client event last spring. Of course, I said. My voice was calm, pleasant. I slid into the booth, taking the seat opposite all 3 of them. Dylan sat beside me. Now I was facing my jury. Lacey is a new partner on the client side now, Veronica said, her voice like honey laced with arsenic. She reached over and patted Lacey's hand. She and Dylan have been working so very closely on the new quarter. We thought it would be lovely for her to join us." "How lovely," I said. Lacey looked at me, attempting a professional smile, but she couldn't hide the glitter in her eyes. It was the unmistakable, giddy triumph of a 24-year-old who believed she had won the ultimate prize. She thought she was the star of this show, the upgraded model. Veronica looked at her with a smug, protective air, as if she were a rare orchid she'd managed to cultivate. Brooke picked up her phone, tapped the screen, and set it back down against the salt shaker. "I'm good at reading lips. I'm good at picking up whispers. It's a requirement for running a busy restaurant floor." I watched as Brooke leaned in toward her mother. She didn't want Dylan to hear. "I'm recording," she whispered, her mouth barely moving. "When you give her the papers, speak up. Make sure the mic catches it." My blood didn't run cold. It didn't do anything. It just kept pumping, steady and slow. They were producing this. They wanted the audio. They wanted the video of my face when the envelope landed. They wanted a digital trophy of my collapse. Trent appeared, my old trainee. He looked impossibly sharp in his black vest and tie. His face was a mask of professional hospitality. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice smooth. He placed coasters down. "Can I get you started with a drink?" "I'll have a vodka martini, very dry. 2 olives," Veronica said. "A glass of the Sancerre," Brooke added, not looking up from her phone. "Dylan?" Trent asked. "Just a scotch. Neat," Dylan said. Trent's eyes finally landed on me. There was no wink, no smile, just the barest flicker of recognition, a microsecond of solidarity. "Ma'am." "I'll just have sparkling water, with a lime. Please, Trent," I said. "Of course." He vanished. The small talk began. It was agonizing. Veronica asked Dylan about the market. Brooke showed a picture of her new shoes to Lacey. They were talking around me, a deliberate, icy exclusion. I didn't care. I let them. When Trent returned with the drinks, the atmosphere shifted. Dylan picked up his scotch, took a nervous sip, and put it down. This was it. The overture. He cleared his throat. He put his hands on the table, lacing his fingers together, a pantomime of sincerity. "Holly," he began. The table fell silent. Brooke's fingers twitched toward her phone, ensuring the angle was right. "I know things. Well, things have been a bit distant with us for a while now." I looked at him. I said nothing. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued. "And I just feel like we're going in 2 very different directions." He paused. He was waiting. This was my cue to say, "What do you mean?" "Dylan." This was where I was supposed to get defensive, to look confused, to start the fight he was prepared for. I picked up my water glass. I took a slow sip. I swirled the ice cubes. The clink, 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 the only sound at the table. I looked at him, my expression one of polite, neutral interest. "Uh-huh," I said. My non-reaction threw him. His practiced speech had hit a wall of glass. He looked at Veronica, a quick, panicked glance. She glared back at him. "Get on with it, you fool." "It's just," he stammered, trying to find his place in the script. "My life is changing. My career is elevating. And I need someone who is, well, more flexible." He glanced at Lacey, who was watching him with rapt, adoring eyes. "Someone younger. You know, for my work, and for my life." He said it. He'd laid the younger card on the table. He looked at me, bracing for the explosion. I set my water glass down, very precisely, on the white coaster. I met his gaze. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even lean forward. I just held his gaze and said, "Okay." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I had given them no fuel. I had given them no tears. I had given them no anger. They had built this massive, elaborate trap, and I had simply refused to step in it. I let them sit there, stewing in the awkwardness. Their entire plans stalled, their cameras recording nothing but my complete and total calm. I was letting them dig their own graves, deeper and deeper. with every second of silence. Trent returned, his professional mask firmly in place. "Are we ready to order this evening, Veronica?" Now clearly the host of this execution, ordered first. "I'll have the lobster thermidor," the most expensive, most obnoxious item on the menu, a celebration. Brooke didn't look up from her phone. "Filet, medium rare." Dylan, looking uncomfortable, just pointed. "The ribeye, medium." Lacey looked at Veronica. A quick, nervous glance, seeking approval. "Just the pan-seared scallops, please," she said, her voice small. Trent's gaze landed on me. "Ma'am." "I'll have the Brixton House salad," I said, my voice clear and even. "Dressing on the side, and please keep the sparkling water coming." Veronica's eye twitched. A salad. I was refusing to partake in the feast. I was rejecting the premise of the celebration. Dylan just stared at his menu. The food arrived with the precise, quiet efficiency I had trained into the staff years ago. The table was suddenly filled with plates, a massive, golden brown lobster, a perfectly charred steak, a delicate arrangement of scallops, and my small bowl of mixed greens. The silence that fell was louder than any argument. It was filled only with the clink, clink, clink of heavy silverware on thick porcelain. They ate, or they pretended to. I pushed a piece of lettuce around my bowl. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the tension of their rehearsed play. I watched Veronica. She wasn't enjoying her $9 an ounce lobster. She was distracted. Her eyes kept lifting from her plate, scanning the restaurant, darting past my shoulder toward the bar. She was looking for Gus, or maybe just watching the floor staff, waiting for some invisible cue. She was an amateur at this, so clumsy in her conspiracy, checking the rigging while the audience was watching. My silence, my calm, my polite consumption of a side salad, it was ruining the script. I was supposed to be brittle, angry, confused. I was supposed to be weeping into a bread roll by now, giving Dylan the opening he needed. He couldn't stand it. He put his fork down with a clatter. "Holly, can you at least say something?" he snapped. The concerned husband mask was cracking, revealing the frustrated, weak man underneath. "What would you like me to say, Dylan?" I asked, taking a sip of water. "I don't know." His voice rose, sharp and cracking, and a couple at the next table looked over. He visibly flushed and lowered his voice to an urgent, angry hiss. "This is hard for me, too. I'm trying to be honest with you. I didn't want this." "You didn't want this," I repeated. It wasn't a question. It was an echo. "No, I'm trying to say, I'm not saying you're not good." He was fumbling, losing the thread, looking to his mother for a lifeline. She gave him an icy, impatient stare. "Get on with it." He found his footing in her glare. He turned back to me, and the cruelty he'd been practicing finally solidified. He said it, the line, the one I'd heard through the garage door, the one he'd been saving. "Look, I'm not saying you're not good. It's just, she's younger. That's all." There it was. The thesis statement for my dismissal. The entire 7-year review. Summarized and delivered. She's younger. That's all. A hot, painful flush crept up Lacey's neck, blooming across her cheeks. Her eyes dropped to her half-eaten scallops. In that single, brutal moment, Dylan had demoted her. She had arrived here believing she was the dynamic, professional partner. He had just publicly clarified that she was just the newer model, her only defining quality her age. It was a victory, but a cheap, humiliating one, and the look on her face said she knew it. Veronica, however, nodded slowly, a smug, philosophical purse of the lips, as if Dylan had just shared a piece of profound, universal wisdom. "Men need inspiration." "Holly," she murmured, her voice carrying just enough to be caught by Brooke's phone. "It's simply nature." Brooke's smirk was pure venom. Her eyes were gleaming. This was the soundbite. This was the drama she had come for. She was probably already imagining how this clip would play to her friends. While they were all lost in their own moment, the martyr, the prize, the matriarch, the documentarian. My hand moved. Under the table, shielded from the view of Brooke's phone camera, My fingers slipped into my leather tote bag. They found the sharp, stiff edge of the red file. I didn't move it. I didn't pull it out. I just let my fingertips rest on it. It was my anchor. It was the ballast. It kept me steady in their manufactured storm. My job offer, my financial statements, my proof, not yet. I told myself, let them finish. The meal staggered to its conclusion. Trent, a ghost of perfect service, materialized to clear the plates. Lacey had barely touched her scallops. Dylan had hacked his ribeye to pieces but eaten less than half. Veronica, disgustingly, had picked every last scrap of meat from the lobster shell. "Can I interest anyone in dessert this evening? Coffee?" Trent asked, his face a perfect mask of polite indifference. "No," Dylan said, too quickly. His hands were flat on the table. "Actually," Veronica cut in, her voice suddenly bright and loud, a performer taking the stage. "I believe we have a special presentation." Trent looked at her, his expression unchanged. Across the room, I saw Gus, standing by the bar. "Give a single." Curt nod. It was the signal. Trent's eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. I gave him the nod. "Now, you're on." But Veronica was faster. She was too eager. She had rehearsed this moment for weeks, and she was not going to be upstaged by a waiter. Before Trent could even pivot, before he could retrieve the bill as instructed, she reached down into her own expensive cream-colored leather handbag. "That will be all, young man," she said, dismissing Trent with a flick of her wrist. Trent paused, caught between my directive and hers. I held up a single finger, a tiny gesture. "Wait." He understood. He gave a slight bow and melted back into the shadows by the service station. Watching, waiting. This was it, the main event. Veronica's hands came up from her lap. She was holding it, the champagne-colored envelope. It was thick, heavy, and gleaming under the soft, recessed lighting of the booth. Brooke's hand darted out, her fingers tapping the side of her phone, ensuring the screen was awake, ensuring the mic was hot. Dylan straightened his spine, bracing himself, his face a mask of pained, false regret. Lacey just stared at the envelope, her eyes wide, finally understanding her role. She was the witness. The table was dead silent. The background clatter of the restaurant, the murmur of other lives, faded to a dull roar. Veronica smiled. It was the most terrible smile I had ever seen. It was all teeth and triumph, a predatory rictus. She slid the envelope across the table. It glided over the white linen and stopped perfectly in front of my empty salad plate. "Happy birthday, Holly," she said. Her voice was a sugary sweet performance, calculated to be heard by Brooke's phone and, perhaps, the neighboring tables. We all discussed it, Dylan, Brooke, and I, and we decided that this is the best gift we could possibly give you. I looked at the envelope. I looked at Veronica's victorious face. I looked at Brooke's phone, its black eyes staring at me. I looked at Dylan, his jaw tight, waiting for the impact. They waited. This was the climax of their play. They were waiting for the explosion. They were waiting for the, "How could you?" They were waiting for the tears, the screaming, the accusations, the hands ripping the envelope to pieces. They had the cameras rolling. They had the audience. I did not move. I did not touch the envelope. I did not speak. I did not cry. I just sat there, my hands folded calmly in my lap, and let them watch me. I let them hang in their own awful staged silence, the spotlight they had so carefully aimed now just illuminating their own cruelty. My silence was a physical thing. It was a void at the table, sucking all the air out of their righteous performance. Veronica's triumphant smile faltered, replaced by a tight, impatient frown. I wasn't following the script. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even touching the envelope. "Well," she prompted, her voice losing its sugary edge. "Aren't you going to open your gift, Holly?" I just looked at her. My face was a placid, calm mask. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of even touching it. She let out an impatient puff of air. This was taking too long. She was losing the dramatic momentum. With a sharp, decisive scrape of her manicured nails. She tore the flap of the champagne envelope open herself. She reached inside and pulled out the contents, fanning them out on the table like a winning poker hand. The thick, heavy paper, the embossed letterhead of a law firm I didn't recognize, and the stark, bold, all-caps title, Petition to Dissolve Marriage. She slid another, thinner document out from behind it, an asset agreement. She laid them both out, side by side, right next to my untouched salad plate. The signature lines at the bottom were stark white, waiting, one for Dylan Bishop, one for Holly Bishop. The second the papers were visible, Dylan's phone came up. He didn't just angle it on the table like Brooke. He lifted it, holding it high and steady in his right hand, pointed directly at my face. The small red light in the corner of his screen was on. He was overtly, shamelessly filming my reaction. He wanted the shot. He wanted the tears, the breakdown, the hysterical wife clip that he could show his friends, his lawyer, maybe even Lacey, to prove how necessary this all was, how unreasonable I was. The performance was now live. Veronica saw the camera was rolling. She leaned forward, her shoulders squared. She pitched her voice to Carrie. It was loud enough for the table of 4 women celebrating a girls' night out just behind Dylan to hear every calculated word. "Holly, listen to me, dear," she said, her tone a grotesque parody of maternal concern. "We know this is difficult. We know this must be a shock." I met her gaze. Shock. The only shock was the sheer, breathtaking audacity. "But sometimes," she continued, her voice swelling with counterfeit wisdom, "sometimes, a woman clinging to a marriage that is clearly over, well, it doesn't just hurt her, it slows everyone down." She was a savior. She was the matriarch, making the tough decisions, liberating her high-flying son from the anchor of his aging. Blue-collar wife. I saw Brooke smirk into her wineglass. This was gold. I tore my eyes from Veronica and glanced at Lacey. She was sitting bolt upright, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her wineglass untouched. She was trying, really trying, to look somber, to play the part of the reluctant, respectful third party. She was failing miserably. Her eyes were electric, glittering with a joy she couldn't contain. Her cheeks were flushed with victory. This was her coronation. This was the moment the old queen was formally deposed. This was the public, dramatic confirmation that she had won. The air in the booth was so thick I could barely breathe. The 4 of them, Dylan the director, Brooke the producer, Veronica the star, and Lacey the prize, were all locked onto me, a captive audience of 1. They were waiting. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2. This was the peak, the exact moment of their triumph. A shadow fell over the table. Trent. He was standing right at Dylan's shoulder, silent as a statue. In his hand, he held the simple, heavy, black leather folder. The check. Veronica, interrupted at the peak of her monologue, glared at him. "I thought I told you we were finished," she snapped, her voice sharp. This wasn't part of her plan. Trent didn't flinch. He didn't even look at her. He placed the black folder on the table, right in the center, a dark, ominous square next to her glittering champagne envelope. The 2 objects sat there, a declaration of war and its invoice, and then he did it. It was not a large gesture. It was a single, fluid, economical motion, a pivot. He slid the black folder across the polished table. It glided past Dylan's filming hand. It glided past my water glass. It glided past Veronica's petition. It stopped, perfectly squared, directly in front of Lacey Rowe. The entire table froze. It was as if someone had cut the audio in the entire restaurant. Dylan's phone wavered, his hand visibly shaking, the lens dropping from my face as he stared, confused, at the folder. Veronica's mouth, which had been open to deliver another line, just stayed open. Brooke, for the first time all night, actually looked up from her phone, her eyes wide with bewilderment. Lacey just stared at the black folder as if it were a live grenade. Trent leaned in. His voice was not loud like Veronica's. It was the opposite. It was quiet, professional, and devastatingly clear. "You will be handling the bill tonight. Correct. Ms. Rowe." I heard it, from the table of 4 women behind us. A sharp sudden snort of laughter, instantly stifled into a choking cough. My eyes flicked to the bar. Gus was standing there, his arms crossed, watching. He saw me look. He gave me the smallest, most imperceptible dip of his chin. Lacey looked up at Trent, her face a blotchy, panicked white. The triumphant glow had vanished, replaced by the raw terror of an intern being called into the CEO's office. "What?" she stammered, her voice a squeak. I don't. No, I'm not." She whipped her head toward Dylan, her eyes wide and pleading. "Dylan." Trent did not acknowledge Dylan. He did not acknowledge Veronica. His professional, the customer service gaze remained locked, politely, on Lacey. He even gave her a small, tight, entirely unhelpful smile. "My apologies, ma'am," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "The reservation was updated this afternoon. The bill is under your name, Ms. Lacey Rowe. For the full party," he tapped the folder lightly with a single finger. "It includes the lobster thermidor, the Sancerre, the fillet, the ribeye, and of course," he added, as a final perfect flourish, "the special birthday cake that was added." That was my cue. The silence was perfect. All the cameras, both digital and human, were finally pointed exactly where I wanted them. I let out a small, almost bored sigh. My hands, which had been resting calmly in my lap, came up. I reached for my leather tote bag by my hip. I didn't snatch it. I didn't move with anger. I moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a CEO opening a meeting. "Well," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the thick, stunned silence. "This is a lot of paperwork for a birthday." I pulled out the red folder, the bright, glossy. Aggressive red was a slash of color on the white table, instantly drawing every eye. It made Veronica's champagne envelope look pale and weak in comparison. I placed it on the table and flipped it open. "Or," I suggested, my voice casual, "maybe I should sign my papers before she pays. I'm not sure of the etiquette." I looked at Veronica, a polite, inquiring look on my face. "What do you think?" "Whoever is younger pays faster, right?" "What? What is that?" Dylan stammered. His phone was still recording, but his hand was shaking so badly the shot must have been useless. He was staring at the red folder, not the divorce papers. "In a minute," I said. I picked up Veronica's petition. The thick, expensive paper felt like cardboard in my hand. I scanned the first page. Irreconcilable differences. A clean, simple lie. I then reached across the table, picked up the pen from beside Veronica's bread plate she had. Of course, brought her own expensive fountain pen and clicked it open. I flattened the signature page on the table, right in front of Brooke's recording phone, and I signed my name. Holly A. Bishop. The ink was black and wet. My hand did not tremble. The signature was firm, clean, and practiced. There were no tears. There was no hesitation. Just the quiet, satisfying scratch of a nib on paper. I was done. "There," I said, sliding the signed petition back toward Veronica. She just stared at it. Her jaw was slack. This was not in her script. The breakdown, the pleas, the accusations, the screaming that was her Act 3. A calm, immediate signature was a plot twist she hadn't even considered. You're signing it," she whispered, her voice a reedy, confused sound. The loud theatrical performance was gone. She was just a stunned, nasty old woman. Just like that. You're not even going to fight." "Fight?" I almost laughed. Why would I fight over him? I nudged the petition. "You wanted this? You wanted him liberated? Consider it my birthday gift to you. Veronica, you get your son back." But your life," she stammered, gesturing vaguely. "The house, you have nothing." Ah, I said. That's what this is. I turned my attention to the red folder. I tapped the first page, the one on top. I turned it around so they could all read the letterhead. Aurora Vista Hospitality. This, I said, my voice clear and precise, is a contingent offer of employment from Aurora Vista Hospitality. As a full-time coordinator, I received it this afternoon. I let my eyes travel from Veronica to Dylan to Brooke. The salary, just so we're all clear, is 30% higher than my current one, and I paused. It comes with a $5,000 relocation bonus. Dylan's face went white. Brooke actually stopped recording. So, you see, Veronica, I'm not clinging to anything, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. Least of all this family. I was just waiting for the right moment to tender my resignation. I then flipped the offer letter over, revealing the stack of papers beneath it, the financial statements, my ammunition. And as for having nothing, I started. I pulled out the first sheet. This is the invoice for the new roof we put on the house last year. $5,000, paid, as you can see, from my bonus. I pulled out the next sheet. These are the auto insurance statements for the past 3 years, for all 3 cars, your Lexus. 2. Veronica, paid by me. I pulled out the next. This is the loan agreement for Dylan's sedan, the one I co-signed, and the one my paycheck has been covering the payments for 27 months straight. I saved the best for last. I pulled out the credit card statement. I held it up. I pointed to the line item. And this is my personal favorite, a $1,000 charge at A.H. Jewelers 2 weeks ago on my credit card. Dylan. I looked at him. My head tilted. I don't remember getting anything from a jeweler. Do you? He looked like I had physically slapped him. So, I concluded, stacking the papers neatly back into their red folder. If anyone at this table, or any court, wants to have a conversation about who was clinging, or who was slowing whom down, or who was, and I hate this word, elevated by whom, I have my notes. I have all my numbers. The silence was a thick, heavy blanket. I turned my head. My final target, Lacey. She looked small, pale, and terrified. The victorious queen had become a hostage. She was staring at the black bill folder, which sat in front of her like a judgment. I softened my voice. I gave her a small, almost kind smile, the smile of a woman, not a rival. You're right, I said to her, and my voice was gentle. You are younger, that is a fact, and he will probably love that about you. For a while. I leaned in. Just a bit, as if sharing a secret. But tonight, this bill is in your name. That's a fact. 2. You wanted to be the partner. You're at the big table now. This is the cost of entry. I picked up my bag. And Lacey. Don't forget to tip Trent. I glanced at him. He was standing perfectly still by the service station, his face a mask of stone. He did his job perfectly. He followed the script. Lacey's eyes filled with hot, humiliated tears. This wasn't the win she had envisioned. Holly? Brooke stammered, finally finding her voice. Her face was bright red. You're just making this worse. You're making a scene. I cut her off, not with a shout, but with a word sharp as a razor. No, I stood up. You invited me to a performance. You set the stage. You hired the cast. You wrote the script. I looked around the table. You even brought cameras. I gestured to her phone, then Dylan's. I'm just playing my part. This is my monologue, and I'm finished. I looked for the last time, at the man I had been married to for 7 years. He was still holding his phone, the red light still on, but his hand had dropped. The lens pointed at the table, recording nothing but his own shaking fingers. I leaned down, close enough for his phone's microphone to catch every single, precise, legally binding word. You're still recording, Dylan. That's good, I whispered. You have just documented yourself, on film, ambushing your wife with a divorce petition at her birthday dinner, surrounded by your family, So you could be with a younger woman. I smiled. A real, cold smile. I'm not a lawyer, but I've watched enough of Maya's trials to know. Do you have any idea how much a judge in a domestic relations court is going to love a clip like that? His face went from white to a mottled, sickly gray. He clicked the phone off. The bubble of our drama had popped, and the sound had carried. The table of 4 women just behind Dylan's shoulder, the ones who had been celebrating a birthday, were no longer pretending not to listen. Their laughing chatter had died. They were watching us, and their faces were a perfect snapshot of American public judgment. I saw their eyes move to Lacey. Their expressions were not angry. They were a mix of pity and fascinated. Morbid curiosity. They looked at Veronica, who was staring, aghast, at the signed petition. The women's faces hardened. It was a look of pure, unadulterated, "Oh my God, what a monster." Then, the eyes of the woman closest to me met mine. She was my age, maybe a little older. She saw my white blazer. She saw my calm. She saw the red folder. She gave me a small, tight-lipped smile and raised her wine glass a half-inch off the table. A silent, respectful toast. Veronica saw it. She saw the eyes of the other diners. She saw the shift in the room. Her grand performance had attracted the wrong kind of attention. She tried, desperately, to shrink the stage she had so carefully built. "This is a family matter, Holly," she hissed. Her voice, which had been projected for the cameras, was now a low, venomous growl, meant only for me. "There is absolutely no need to make a scene." I almost laughed. The sound that came out was short, dry, and devoid of all humor. "A scene," I said, my voice still clear and calm. "You brought a petition to dissolve my marriage to my birthday dinner. Veronica, you brought his mistress. You brought cameras." I gestured to the 2 dark phones on the table. "You wanted a scene. You built the set, and you cast the play. You made this big. I'm just correcting the size. I'm just showing everyone exactly what it is." "Holly, please," Dylan said. His voice was a thin, reedy whine. He sounded like a child. "Please stop. We can talk about this. Privately. At home." I slung my leather tote onto my shoulder. My body felt light. I looked down at him. This stranger. This weak, hollow man. "Privately?" I asked. "No, we're done with private. You had your big public moment. You said everything you needed to say." I leaned in. Just a fraction. My voice low but sharp. "You said, she's younger. That's all. Now it's my turn." I stood up straight, pulling my blazer flat. "I can take care of myself. That's all." I reached into my bag, pulled out my wallet, and took a $20 bill from the cash I'd taken out that morning. I placed it on the table, well away from their side, right next to my water glass. "This is for my salad and my water," I said. My voice was loud enough for Trent, who was still standing, watchful, by the service station. "The rest of it," I continued, gesturing to the wreckage of their meal, the lobster shell, the half-eaten steaks, the expensive bottle of Sancerre. "The whole expensive celebration, the bill for my public humiliation, is in that black folder, right in front of my husband's girlfriend." Trent met my eyes. He gave a single, sharp, professional nod. His expression was one of pure, unadulterated respect. The restaurant, my old home, was on my side. Before I turned to go, I looked at Lacey. One last time. She was a wreck. Her face was streaked with tears, her expensive blonde blowout now damp and flat. The victorious queen was now just a 24-year-old girl, completely out of her depth, staring at a bill she absolutely could not pay. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel rage. I just felt a vast, cold, distant pity. "Hey," I said. My voice was not unkind. It was just a fact. "You should probably start preparing now." She looked up at me, sniffling, her eyes red and confused. "What?" "You should prepare," I said, very clearly, "because in 5 years, maybe 7 if you're lucky, when he finds someone younger than you, his mother, I nodded at Veronica, who looked as if she'd been carved from ice, is going to be sitting right here, in this exact booth, with a pretty colored envelope, and it will have your name on it. Lacey let out a small, broken sound, like a sob. I turned my back on them. I did not look back. I walked. I didn't rush. I walked with my head held high, my white blazer bright under the lights. I walked past the table of 4 women. The one who had toasted me smiled, openly this time. I walked through the main dining room. The low murmur of conversation quieted as I passed. People saw something in my face, in the way I held myself. They instinctively moved their chairs, clearing a path for me. A man at a two-top, dining with his wife, smiled at me. An encouraging, supportive smile from a total stranger. I reached the heavy glass and wood front doors. The young hostess, the one who hadn't known me, scrambled to pull the door open, her eyes wide with a kind of awe. The little brass bell above the door chimed. A bright, clear ding. The night air hit my face, the cold, damp wind of a Ravendale March. It wasn't cold. It was clean. It was the freshest, sharpest, most beautiful air I had ever breathed. It was the wind of absolute, total freedom. Back in the booth, the silence was a tomb. The neighboring tables had their show, and now they returned to their meals. Whispering, Veronica, her face a mask of pure reptilian fury, finally leaned across the table. Her voice was a low growl, meant only for Lacey. "Pay it. Just pay it, you little fool. I will transfer you the money later." But it was too late. Everyone had seen. Everyone had seen the bill delivered. Everyone had seen the tears. Everyone had seen who was left holding the bag. Dylan sat frozen, a statue of his own cowardice. He looked at the black folder. He looked at the signed petition. He looked at his phone, still clutched in his hand, now just a dark, silent rectangle. He realized, with a dawning, sickening horror, that his perfect plan to liberate himself had just become his own undoing. He hadn't recorded my breakdown. He had recorded his own cruelty. He had recorded his mother's conspiracy. He had recorded his own humiliation. He had created, in his own arrogant hand, the perfect exhibit, A for my lawyer. I stepped off the curb, away from the warm, golden light of the Brixton house. I stood on the dark, wet pavement of the parking lot. My car was 30 feet away. My duffel bag was in the trunk. My new life was in my inbox. I stopped. I pulled my phone from my bag. The screen lit up my face, bright in the darkness. I opened my messages. I found my conversation with Maya. My fingers were perfectly steady. I typed one word. Done. I hit send. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories. Like this video. And if you want to help this story be heard by more people, please hit that hype button to support the channel.